Greetings. This is my personal guide to how to combat wet dreams. This is entirely based on personal experience and what works for me and not anything professional to any degree. And since I am a biological male, these tips are mainly directed at other biological males. They could be useful for others, but I cannot verify this. For context, I started getting wet dreams at 13, and though I'm an adult, I still live with others. I don't want knowing about what I've been going through, so if there's more obvious things used for stopping wet dreams not listed, that's why. I'll start with all the techniques I currently use and then talk about additional things that I've used in the past. First and foremost, while there are many techniques I've used to avoid actually going in my sleep with varying degrees of success, there is only one thing that has prevented me from having dreams with things that turn on altogether. And that is to use the same technique military soldiers use to fall asleep faster. Right before you sleep, repeat the phrase, "Don't think," out loud over and over in your head until your head is clear of all thoughts, or fall asleep. So far on the days I actually remember to do this, I haven't had a single wet dream, but I only recently learned it, so time will tell if this stays so foolproof. Of course, that on its own isn't the end-all be-all. There's a lot of setup that goes into this. First, make sure if you are really craving a fix on any given day to get it all out at least 2 hours before sleep, so you are less likely to think about anything sexual before bed. Make sure you don't drink any more than a couple sips of any fluid before bed. Pick at least 1 or 2 hours before you sleep to stop drinking any kind of drink. While peeing and going are not instinctively connected, any kind of feeling down there could spark something in the middle of the night, so avoid this and make sure you've peed as much as you need to before heading to bed. Next, always be ready for an accident regardless. Always put 2 tissues layered on top of each other, layered flat on the front in your underwear, and if it isn't too hot out, you could even wear 2 pairs of underwear at the same time. Next, sleeping positions and bed setup. I found that comfort is a big deciding factor on if you will have a wet dream or not. If you are too comfortable, you will subconsciously enter some relaxed mode, and your mind is more likely to show you things that make you feel good. But if you're too uncomfortable, your brain will overcompensate by showing you something that will give you easy pleasure. Always sleep facing straight up. This one is professionally verified to help. It also helps with a bunch of other things. Sleeping on your sides or belly puts you in that aforementioned relaxed state. Take your blanket and tuck it underneath yourself on both sides like you do with a paper towel for some frozen foods. This will assure you don't reposition in your sleep. You could keep your arms in or out of the blanket, whichever helps you stay in place. Make sure your pillow isn't too comfortable, but not too uncomfortable for reasons listed previously. Not the best idea for your general life, but the less you sleep, the less likely your brain will drift off to wet world. And it's also worth noting that during puberty, wet dreams are at an all-time high and will fizzle out as you become an adult. Of course, if you are an idiot and get no bitches like me, they might continue to haunt you even as an adult. I do not know how true this is, as I've put it upon myself to write down, remember, and recreate my wet dreams, so I might have permanently afflicted myself with an endless cycle of wet dreams. So that's everything I still use and works for me to this day, but just because they work for me doesn't mean it will work for you. Now for the other techniques I used in the past that worked to varying degrees but no longer use. One of the ideas that worked best, though inconsistently, which is almost polar opposite to what I use now, is edging. Yeah, laugh it up, it's the funny brain rot word. I am being serious. Sometimes I would deliberately start thinking about things that turn me on as hard as possible as I am already in bed, getting as hard possible, but never going, think about it long enough until it doesn't hit as hard, and eventually going back to normal. Then I will think about something normal, or nothing at all. A lesser version of this is to get out all your stuff right before bed, but I always feel there's still just enough time between bed to start thinking about it again. And honestly, if you struggle with porn addiction in general, edging honestly isn't a bad place to start learning restraint. Back when I couldn't stop myself from becoming hard in bed, the tissue would often to get moved out of place and become useless. So I wrapped it around and used another to tie in on. This rarely actually worked and I wouldn't recommend it, but if nothing else works, it's there. So that is my general guide to combating wet dreams. Hopefully this helped you, and one day we can all be freed from this curse.